Welcome back to On Texas Football's Wednesday night Longhorn Livestream. I'm your host, Amanda Owl, and we got some special guests with us tonight. We have, of course, CJ Vogel, but we're joined also by Bobby Burton and Marcus Myers. How are y'all doing tonight, guys?
Doing good. Thought I'd stop by on a Wednesday night, see how everybody's doing, Amanda.
Yeah, happy to have y'all. How you doing, Marcus?
Doing well. No complaints on this end.
Yeah, no complaints. Except for maybe the results of the game last weekend. But hopefully we'll get a win this weekend. We just got the injury report for Arkansas. Anthony Hill, and I think this is kind of what we expected here. Anthony Hill as questionable and probable Ryan Wingo. That's a little bit more relieving there. So Anthony Hill, I think we assume him to likely be out at this point.
Yeah, I mean, to CJ's point, I think we were talking a little pregame. It's possible that he plays, but we've heard that it's questionable. We'll see how it goes. What exactly did you hear on that, CJ?
He's been, it's been difficult for him to, I guess, functionally move and use the hand. Of course, we've seen players in the past, depending on severity, club it up and play with the club. With it happening so recently, still kind of working it out to see if that's a viable option. But I have not yet heard how much of Anthony Hill has been used at practice. In fact, I've heard that earlier in the week he was shelved quite a bit. But look, I know we sat here the last couple of nights and talked about maybe some of the frustrations for the season and what's still ahead and how to really utilize these next 2 weeks. Well, fortunately for Texas, they're going to have their entire roster for the most part at their disposal when it comes to Arkansas and Texas A&M. Knocking on wood there, but to see nobody is out and then to see a laundry list of guys from Arkansas, that
Oh. I think he froze up.
CJ?
He just froze up on us.
Just froze for a split second.
CJ, you froze, buddy. Hey, let me. He's got the same information I've got on Anthony Hill. I do have some news on Ryan Wingo that I think he can share. He was back at practice this week. He is listed as probable. And look, Ryan's got an injury that at some point is probably going to need some repair. But he's opted to take the way out where he's going to try to go long term and see if he can't get through these next 2 weeks. We'll see if that changes later this week. That's why I think Sark listed him as probable.
What kind of impact do you think, if Anthony Hill is out this weekend against Arkansas, what kind of impact do you think that'll have on the Texas defense, especially facing an offense like Arkansas that has had a lot of success despite their records deceiving? Their offense has had a lot of success this season.
Well, first and foremost, it's significant in the run game, right? We talked about it a little bit, Bobby, on the breakdown. Arkansas is the second best rushing offense in the entire first half. Anthony Hill going downhill is where he has a lot of success. I think, in fact, we see a lot of Leon Lafau in this game, right? He's been one of his greatest strengths as a Texas linebacker is plugging run holes and making sure that the run doesn't leak out to the opposite side. But, it's going to be difficult because if Arkansas starts to have success in the passing game and that pocket is clean for Taylon Green, you don't have the luxury of having a guy with 13 sacks over the last 2 years sitting back and being utilized as a queen on a chessboard. You could throw Anthony Hill anywhere, blitzing from the second level, blitzing off the edge, playing games with him and Colin Simmons on the same side, right? You don't have that luxury, and that's where things get a little dicey because then you're going to have to get deeper into your bag of depth, and that to me sounds like Brad Spence's music more than anything for when Texas needs to generate pass rushing pressure.
Marcus, you played a little linebacker. What do you think it impacts?
Yeah, I mean, I think CJ covered that really well. I think one of the issues you have is just some of that continuity. I mean, of all the issues that you've had on the back end and with the defense at different times this year, Anthony Hill has been, a constant. And so that's a known commodity that you have. That's something that you can count on and exactly what he can do. And, even you saw, against Georgia, I mean, that wasn't necessarily an errant or bad pass by Gunnar Stockton. And he's someone that does a really good job of taking care of the ball. That was Anthony Hill being, Anthony Hill and making a play that a lot of linebackers couldn't make. So you would certainly miss that playmaking ability. You would miss his leadership out there. And at the same time, that's, the whole point of trying to continue to recruit guys at a high level. so that they have the ability to get out there. I see this about me suiting up. That will not be happening on Saturday. I got a helmet back there, and that's pretty much where it'll stay. I'm actually having a little procedure in the morning to try to clean up some stuff, in my neck and back. So,
man,
officially list me as out for being able to participate in the game on Saturday, but I'll be there to cheer the boys on.
Marcus, when was the last time you put that helmet on? Do you know?
Man, I put it on at the start of a show one night, messing around, trying to kind of be like Rod a little bit. I thought, maybe he would appreciate that. I was trying to see if I could still get into it. More than anything, a lot of times I'll throw the helmet on like one of my nieces or something when they're over here, and see if they can kind of stand upright, because it is a little heavy.
That makes sense. We did get a question from Colby here. Wingo's still dealing with the thumb, or is this a new injury? It's the thumb still, right?
No.
Okay. It's a new one?
It's a separate, it's something separate that has been lingering for a while.
Okay. All right. Well, aside from that, I think the bigger news of the day is Steve Sarkisian had his press conference earlier today, and he didn't mince words in this press conference about a little rumor that was flying around based on a comment made by Desmond Howard earlier this week. And I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit, Bobby, and just kind of his commentary and just trying to nip this in the bud, and what your thoughts on his response were.
Yeah, I mean, the response, I think CJ has a tweet that he put up, or somebody had one, or Jeff Howe, whoever quoted that. People reporting or insinuating that there's a possibility I could leave the University of Texas. That's absolutely false and untrue. I'm not going anywhere. He went on to, he ad-libbed for another 30 seconds to a minute on this, CJ and Marcus, as well as Amanda. And, ended up calling, I think, Desmond Howard and Diane Rossini were equated to Joe Blow. I think, these people keep piping up. Here's what I would say. Steve Sarkisian has addressed this and addressed it and addressed it. And people keep trying to bring it up like it's new news or something different. And I'm here to tell you, it is harmful to the University of Texas and their recruiting efforts, their portal recruiting efforts, to the existing team, for people to kind of just be so cavalier with their words about who may or may not be leaving, or, posting a snarky Instagram post, etc. Words have repercussions. And you don't think that Brandon Harris, the Texas GM, and guys like Chad Scott, the Texas running back coach, or you name it, Kenny Baker, defensive line coach, Steve Sarkisian, hasn't had to answer recruiting questions because of these things? I mean, and then there's people out there that entertain it. Well, if he left, then who would we get? And what does this mean? Stop it. And the head coach has spoke. The athletic director has spoken. Not only that, people behind the scenes that I've spoken to, and I mentioned right away, have said there's nothing to this. That doesn't mean that, he gets offered the job by somebody and he does, but he has no plans right now. He's focused on this team. I think that a lot of people are trying to put things into play that frankly hurt the University of Texas. They do. Those things get tweeted around among recruits. They get tweeted around among the team, who's currently, a lot of them are currently deciding whether or not to go in the portal. Was our coach even going to be here? So all of the people out there that are giving air to this and breathing life into it, like there's so much smoke, something's got to be true to it. Bull. That's what I think. And that's what he's trying to say. He can't say it any more clearly to folks. And for those people that want to keep giving it air, I don't know what to tell you other than you're doing nothing more than hurting the University of Texas if you're a Longhorn fan. So, which
I think is where a lot of it comes from too, Bobby.
Yeah.
The weaponization of rumors, and, we hear dirty recruiting often. Back in the day, it obviously meant a lot more now than than what we've seen with the NIL era. But hey, if you have a leak, there's schools looking to take advantage of it, and I think that's where a lot of the noise is coming as well.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. I see people even on our message board on Texas Football take that and then go, well, there's so much smoke, there must be something to it. No, there doesn't have to be. Just because you think there's smoke from somebody else. I feel like, and I'm not trying to chastise anybody or go off, but the idea that people know what's going on behind the scenes whenever I'm sitting here and I actually do talk to these people, they're wrong. The people out there are wrong, and the people entertaining it and acting like there's truth, they just don't get it. They don't understand. So I'll leave it at that. I think Steve Sarkisian tried to speak his mind while and he's tried to be as tactful as possible in the last couple of weeks about it, while getting his team prepared, hopefully, to play Georgia last week, Mississippi State on the day of the game. Yeah, keep propagating those rumors, because that's all it's doing is detracting from the team and the situation itself. So that's all I'll say.
I think one thing that also baffles me in these kinds of situations is, even after you see this quote that Sark put out in this press conference, you see fans in the comments saying, "Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's gone." And that does nothing but damage the situation even further. And also, is this just what it's going to be? You have one season that's not living up to the expectation you have set, so immediately you go to, oh, the coach is out of here. One season. Do we realize how difficult it is to rebuild a program with an entirely new head coaching staff? Do we have a short memory to back when Steve Sarkisian was hired and the first season was 5-7, the next season was a few more wins, the next season was a few more wins? It takes years to rebuild a program. So do you really want to encourage and egg on this kind of thing that, oh, he must be gone, instead of maybe just hope he stays because he has built a good program, regardless if it is not living up to the expectation that you have at the University of Texas? And yes, that is disappointing. That is frustrating as a fan, but it's not the end of the world. Things aren't on fire. This isn't year 3 of a 8-win season. So I don't know. I get very frustrated when I see these comments as well.
I think you made some really good points, Amanda. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, like in this day and age, and maybe it was always the case, but we just see it so much more now with social media. A lot of people really enjoy chaos, right? Like, this is kind of an aside, but in similar vein, like I always notice, like when you go to restaurants, a lot of times, like more times than not, people complain to managers than they do, like, give them compliments, right? It's just it's something that I think people just, for whatever reason, they enjoy it. And so even looking at the chat right now, right? Like he put this statement out today. And if you look at our chats from the last couple of days, when this stuff is kind of lingering out there, it was a lot more negative. There was a whole bunch more people that thought they had all the answers and that this is what's going to happen and this is what's happening behind the scenes. And all of a sudden you see a little bit less of that when something like this is out there. And so it's no coincidence to me that like a lot of it happens after a loss, right? Do I think all this noise would have happened if they had found a way to beat Georgia? Probably not, And so at the end of the day, like Texas is always going to be a program that people are going to love or love to hate. And there will always be some value in getting clicks and getting eyeballs on something that is Texas related. I do just always find it interesting, the timing of these things and the fact that a lot of people just kind of hide behind keyboards. I know that wasn't necessarily what Desmond did, but, a lot of people kind of hide behind keyboards with a lot of this stuff and don't really care about some of the fallout because, again, like a lot of folks enjoy chaos. And,
Marcus, I agree, they may enjoy chaos. I hope they like the Longhorns more if they're Texas fans than they like chaos. Yeah. Because I'm here to tell you, stuff like this, if you perpetuate it, it will hurt recruiting. Period.
Sure. And that's why
let's go out and have a podcast about what could happen if he did. That's just not what we're going to do. And it's bull crap, in my opinion, that people are trying to do this in a number of different ways. So I'm done with this personally. Y'all can carry it on. I need to be quiet because I'm too charged up right now.
Yeah, my only other thing is the people in the comments that respond saying, "Oh, he's gone," all of this. What kind of statement do you want him to give that will convince you that this is the truth? What else could he have said here? Is my thing. How else would you have phrased this? That's my thing. So
Yeah.
Just cropping up from everywhere. And that's the problem. I mean, and people think they can say things that, particularly people that are in the public eye, they think they can say innocuous things and still get away with it. It's a new way of reporting that I didn't grow up with. I'm not saying that it's this new generation or whatever. Maybe it's social media, to Marcus's point. He pointed that out, and I think there's some truth to that maybe. But there's no way Desmond Howard, who is on College Game Day, should be talking like that about a college football coach. There's just no way without substantial sources backing it up. It's like I said, it's unfortunate, but look, I can tell you guys from my vantage point, I've talked to folks behind the scenes at the very highest levels, and Texas is very happy with their head football coach. The head football coach is very happy at the University of Texas. What else is there to say? And I think they're committed to him. He's committed to them likewise. So let's move forward, I guess.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll tell you a little bit more about some recruits that Texas or that CJ got to go out and see today, and then talk about this Arkansas game we got coming up this weekend right after we hear from our friends over at South Point. Hey, Texas football fans, score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock, including the all-new 2025 Ram 1500. Get the real deal today and drive away in an all-new Ram, proven to last. Plus, you can get employee incentive pricing. That's right. You pay what our employees pay. Now, that's a real deal. So score big today at South Point Dodge. Come and see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. All right, guys, y'all make sure to get your questions in. Super chats will jump to the top of our list. But CJ, take it away with some recruits you saw today out of Georgetown, just north up I-35.
Yeah, I made the trip up this morning. They're preparing for a big home playoff game this weekend. If you're in the area, if you want to see some studs, Frisco Lone Stars making the trip down to Georgetown. That's going to be a fun battle. But Texas offered 2 Georgetown Eagles last week. Obviously, Jet Walker right now, really talented football player, averaged 10.7 yards per carry last year. You see it here. I asked Marcus to watch some of the tape earlier. So, Marcus, I want to get your thoughts here in a minute. Currently committed to Minnesota. But look, he has a pre-existing relationship with Chad Scott. Obviously, he had previously committed to him while he was still at West Virginia. Now that he's at Texas and Texas opted to take a second back in the 26th cycle, Jet Walker is looking like the guy that they have their sights set on. I had a great conversation with Jet, and I put up some quotes earlier on Texas football. We'll probably have a video coming tomorrow as well. I got to sit down and talk with both of these guys. But for Jet, look, he's got Texas fandom in his family, right? And what I mean by that is he said both his grandma and his great-grandmother attended the university. And when one of them passed, they actually played the Eyes of Texas at the funeral. So for Texas, only about 30 minutes down the road, the idea that he could potentially play there is a big deal. 6'2", 215. He will eventually carry about 225, ran 11 flat. You see the ability to break some tackles, run through arm tackles, and then, of course, the breakaway speed to get home on some big plays. But really talented football player. And I'll talk a little bit more about Caden Scherer here in a second. But, Marcus, what'd you see that kind of stood out to you when watching Jet Walker's tape earlier today?
Yeah, man, it was pretty cool, watching this tape. Once you asked me to take a look at it, had really good contact balance. Was a guy that doesn't waste a ton of motion, as you can kind of see. I'm not sure if we'll get to it, but there was even a clip where he slips out of the backfield and runs like a long wheel route downfield and shows good hands, makes a play on it. You don't see him, wasting a ton of motion. And, and what I watched, I didn't really see anybody bring him down on first contact. So, to me, that is the type of thing you want to see, out of a runner, somebody that is physical, And it looks like he kind of runs with a chip on his shoulder, right? And, if anything, I would say he's probably going to have to work a little bit on, lowering his pad level some. He's, a taller back. And then I think even as you saw, like in that blitz pickup, making sure he doesn't stop his feet when, contacting a defender. But, at the end of the day, man, he's the type of player that can grow in your program, right? Isn't going to necessarily be somebody that is looking to full on just be like a 3-and-done guy. Someone that could be an integral part of your team, really do well on special teams as he's, working to earn playing time. So looks like a really solid prospect, and it's pretty funny that, he's committed to Minnesota. I think, Amanda, you were mentioning that it looks like we're poaching from Minnesota a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to steal a recruit from my boyfriend's alma mater. If only he cared about Minnesota football. He's more of the hockey type, which can you blame him considering Minnesota football?
Well, that's potentially 2 recruits that Texas could steal from Minnesota. I actually asked Jed, I said, hey, did you know Charlie Gillick at all whenever he was committed to Minnesota? Obviously, y'all were in the same class. Now he's committed to Texas. He said, yeah. We took official visits together to Minnesota over the summer. And he said, look, Charlie's a good-looking prospect. He said he's probably closer to 6'6" than he is 6'5", as he's listed on a number of sites. So worth mentioning that as well. But a lot of enthusiasm. And, of course, offensive lineman Caden Scherer, I got to speak with him quite a bit. His official visit will be tomorrow as well. He's currently committed to Stanford, and he mentioned that. He said, look, I'm committed. I'm waiting to see exactly what happens with the Stanford coaching hire. Stanford right now working with an interim. But altogether, look, he shared very much the same sentiment. Like, I see Texas hats everywhere. I grew up in the area. I know what it's like to attend games or watch the television late at night and see the news breaking down the University of Texas, because I've been in this area for quite some time. And, I can't acknowledge that it's nothing. And for Texas and for Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian, they like the idea of Scherer coming into the program, building in the strength and conditioning program, and then finding a home for him positionally in a year or two. Right now, he's 6'6", 285 pounds. Eventually, I think he could carry about 320. But he looked good, and he's got quite an athletic background as well. He played baseball, basketball, soccer. He wrestled for a little bit, threw the javelin. He said he ran track with Jet Walker as well growing up. So this is a kid that's been through it all when it comes to the athleticism realm. He also was a tight end and defensive end. So look, whenever they finally got him convinced that offensive tackle was the spot for him, he dove into the pool feet first when trying to learn everything technically, and it's paid off quite a bit. So we'll see after this weekend. Both will be on campus against the Arkansas Razorbacks this weekend, and I like where Texas sits for both.
Awesome. Thanks so much, CJ. All right. We'll talk a little bit more about this Arkansas game coming up after we hear from our friends over at Advanced Pain Care.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, y'all, get your questions in. Make sure to get your super chats in. They'll jump to the top of our list. We got one here from Slick Rick. Marcus, you were a part of the team. What disciplinary actions are taking place when a team doesn't learn from their penalty mistakes? I think this is a good one to talk about heading into Arkansas, because that's one of the biggest concerns for this team right now. Just consistently shooting themselves in the foot. And I feel like this is something that likely varies from coach to coach as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this, and I always feel weird when I say it, because it makes me kind of feel like old and that I'm leaning too much on the past. But I don't remember our teams like having these kind of penalty issues. I would say, generally speaking, we would tend to call them missed assignments if it was something that you did in game that was causing a penalty. But then also, once Coach Brown brought in Dick Tomey, he had a saying where he called them NOSs, which was not our standard. And when that happened, it would be day after a game, and you would basically have to kind of get in the middle of your teammates, yell your name, say that you did something that wasn't within the standard, and it would usually be one of two things. At that point, Mad Dog would kind of take over and He would have us doing stuff that we really did not care to do. The one that a lot of people have, probably even experienced sometimes in like even youth and middle and high school is a lot of times the person that did it would sit and watch their teammates then be the ones get punished. And, my teams were a bit spirited. So if you did that enough and you were a repeat offender, it typically wasn't the coaching staff that handled it. You would see some guys in the locker room that would handle it for you. So, an element of it is some good old fashioned yelling. But I think in instances like this, Amanda, it's more really trying to get to the root of what the issue is. Are they fundamentally doing something that, is, outside of what they're being coached to? Obviously, they're not being coached to, commit penalties, but how do you find a way? I mean, when a guy commits a penalty, he doesn't realize, it's not that he doesn't realize he made the mistake, right? So you're kind of fighting this fine line between, just bagging on them and coming down on them in a manner that isn't productive, but then still trying to find a way. Like I said, that's why I kind of opened it with the way I did. I'll be honest, I've not seen something like this, or certainly not something this pervasive. And so that's something that they've got to root out. We've talked a bit about, and I know Bobby, you and the guys did, some stuff, a bit forward looking in terms of, kind of state of the program and some things that'll have to take place in the offseason. That'll certainly be one of them, because if you continue to move forward in that manner, it's really challenging to be successful. You're constantly putting yourself behind the 8 ball. You're constantly undoing any progress that you're making. And so for us, some of that, bringing in some of the toughness was it did require bringing in somebody else that had a different spin to it, that brought a different edge about things and communicated maybe in a different manner. And so I imagine that's certainly on the table as we talk about what happens later on after the season's been completed.
It sounds to me you got to bring back a little public shaming, huh? A little
man.
Nice. It does. And I'm sure the first time you're in the middle of that circle getting called out for 2 holding calls or a personal foul or jumping off sides, whatever, I think that carries over to the next week, knowing that's something that you probably don't want to experience again. I don't know what Texas does when it comes to penalties to carry on this conversation. I think whatever it is that Texas does to address penalties probably needs to change, considering we're 10 games into the season and the issue is still very prevalent, right? Texas, again, it's been an issue since game 1 against Ohio State, and it can't go on. I know that we use the idea that Texas is a young team to kind of evaluate on a big picture, but look, these kids know what is allowed in the game of football, right? Holding, jumping off sides, personal fouls, special teams penalties. That's something that is a detriment to your team. And after a while, the fact that it has not been corrected is a pretty significant issue to me.
I'll just say real quick, too, I think Lane in the chat put it well. It says something about discipline isn't something you just fix during the week, right? And I partially agree with that in that, like, you don't just all of a sudden make some huge shift from what you've been. And so to your point, CJ, for all the youth commentary that we've made and acknowledged and what have you, I mean, we're in week 11 now, right? I mean, at this point, you kind of are what you are, and I hope that they're able to mitigate it. I hope that there are things that, they're able to do to reduce it. But at this point, they've kind of shown who they've been, and I think it's, incumbent upon everybody in that building at every single level to do something to change it. I think we'd all kind of be fools to expect it to just go from, 9 this past weekend down to 0. And at the same time, there have been some games where they've taken a pretty wide swing from one week to the next. But I agree. I think it is something that's foundational. And for whatever reason, it's lacking right now.
You mentioned special teams, CJ, and Marcus. And Buddy Powell, Chief Big Guy, says, feels like we have a ton of penalties on special teams.
Yeah.
Anybody else? I mean, Marcus, everybody agree with that? I mean, nod their head. Yeah. I mean, I feel like at one point they took Warren Roberson off special teams, and I'm not trying to point the finger inappropriately at a single player, but last year Amari Niblack was like the king of penalties for the first 5 games, and they finally took him off of special teams. Somehow Warren Roberson keeps getting back on and committing more penalties. But look, I think that there's that. I think that the other piece that I would say as far as discipline is concerned, or emphasizing things. It's not just penalties that portrays a lack of discipline, right? Or a lack of focus. It's also things like drop passes, right? And I know for a fact, I don't know if they still do this, Marcus, but if you dropped the pass for Bobby Kennedy back in the day, wide receiver coach, you did 10 push-ups right then. Mm-hmm. If you dropped a pass in practice, it was 10 push-ups right away. I don't know if they still do that or not. I don't know if they should even do that anymore. I'm not, but there are things like that that can re-emphasize good habits and the importance of attention to detail is what we're really talking about, whether it's, when we're talking about discipline and execution. So,
yeah. A lot of times it's little things like that, and I guess lastly, I'll say too, I know a couple people are saying like 10 push-ups is weak, but I don't think you understand the impact of what it looks like to be singled out in front of your boys,
yes.
and that is a feeling that is kind of hard to describe. It seems very minor, but like it's embarrassing, and I can imagine it's even more embarrassing when you're the one that's being singled out, in the game, and it's on TV and it's on film and all the things. But, he's right. Coach Kennedy did that. If you were a running back and you fumbled, it's very old school. Coach Haywood would make you carry a ball around campus. And if any of us saw you hanging with it loosely and we came back with the ball and instead of you had some consequences to pay. So it's certainly a different generation, but as cheesy as some of it may sound, there's a method to the madness. And, just psychologically, you don't want to look like that in front of your teammates. I mean, these are, when you're a close-knit group, these are your brothers, man. And I will tell you, we did not hold any punches. We were pretty brutal on one another, but it's because we expected, a certain level of one another. And you don't want to let, your teammates down.
Yeah. I mean, I know I played college soccer for a bit, and our punishments were a little bit different, but similar in the concept of if you do something in practice the coach doesn't like, you're running a lap around the field alone. Mm-hmm. If you do enough things wrong, that's a lot of laps, and that's pretty exhausting. And also the concept of just you're not practicing, you're off solo running a lap around the field when you could be with your teammates practicing. So is it effective? Sometimes it can be, depending on the team, but I don't know. They need to figure something out here. But I will say one thing is, with one of the teams coming up on the schedule having similar issues, A&M is, I think, ranked 125 in penalties per game, and Texas is at like 135. So that could be a really fun game as far as penalties go.
What I heard is a 4-hour game.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah. I mean,
well, it's not. Can you imagine playing a Mike Leach team, Marcus, that had penalty problems? That'd be a 5-hour game.
Yeah, man.
Back in the day.
That's tough.
Oh,
yeah. We'll have to see how that one goes. But the focus this weekend, Cisco asked, can Texas use a similar game plan that Notre Dame did against Arky? I didn't watch that game, so I don't know what game plan they had. So if y'all want to comment on that.
They had a guy named Jeremiah Love.
I was going to say, an all-world running back and even a all-conference running back as their second guy in the next 5 days. I probably would imagine no. They did have success throwing the football as well, but look, it didn't matter. Notre Dame was able to move the ball up and down the field all day because of their running game, because they can move the lines of scrimmage up front. Texas, again, we've talked about it. I don't need to beat the dead horse anymore, but you're dead last in conference play by about 25 yards when it comes to your average rushing yards per game against other SEC teams. That's not good. It's not good at all. And even as bad as Arkansas is, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it matters, because we've seen sack teams in the past come into games with low levels of sacks, low levels of tackles for loss, and leave with, a buffet. So right now, no, I don't think that plan is replicable at all.
Yeah. I mean, I would share the same sentiment. Like I can sit here and paint a picture for how it could be. We just haven't shown that we would do it, right? I mean, if we're only running the ball 10 times with our running backs against Georgia in a game where what I think was 5 or 6 carries on the first drive, I can't sit here and tell anybody I think that we're going to go out and do it on Saturday. I think it would be wise to try it, but to this point, I don't have confidence that we'll stick with it.
Sorry, guys, there was a jet flying by me, so I had to mute my mic for a second. And there's somebody calling me. Everything's going off at once. Sorry about that. Now, with the run game, if that's not going to be how Texas is going to beat this Arkansas team, what strategy is? You obviously want to try to get Wisner and CJ Baxter doing things that you haven't really seen since. I mean, you saw him a little bit more in Vanderbilt since Vanderbilt and Oklahoma were the best running games that we've seen all season. But how is Texas going to beat this team otherwise?
Well, look, it's not like Texas is going up against the Georgia defense, right? Arkansas is pretty bad in the run, the pass, and everything in between. There should be room for success with whatever Texas wants to use, as long as they stick with it, right? Marcus, you mentioned only 10 running back attempts a week ago. Look, you can have success on the ground and stick with it, or you can wait until that, kind of evens out as the game progresses. It's going to be there for Texas if they give it a chance. But look, I had it written down because we talked about it a little bit on the breakdown with Bobby and Rod Babers earlier today. Arkansas's corners are very susceptible for the big play. And what I mean by that is teams put up – I would have loved to see – this is an aside here. I would have loved to see what these spring practices and fall practices look like when they scrimmaged each other. Was it essentially just line the ball up in the 25, offense, one play, 75-yard touchdown, flip it around, do it again? Because that's basically what the numbers tell me. They allow a lot of big plays through the air. Jordan Young, Julian Neal, Connie Walker, all three of these guys played 75% of snaps in the secondary for the Arkansas Razorbacks. They all allow more than 14 yards per reception, all of which over 60% completion as well. They don't cover well, and like Texas recently, there's a lot of bust in coverage. To me, this feels like a game that could be in the mid-30s. That's what I predicted. I think even one team might hit the 40s. And for folks looking around saying, well, could Texas score 40 against this team? I think anybody could score about 40.
Yeah, I think they've got to find a way to be a little bit methodical. But to your point, CJ, it's kind of hard when you are that bad. And I know we've talked about different teams before. Arkansas is categorically the worst defense that they would have faced in the SEC to this point. By pretty much any statistical measure, they just aren't really up to snuff in that respect. So, I think they've got to find a way to put together, some, again, for me, if I'm trying to find, the best path to victory, it would be running the ball, right? You want to lean on them some. And again, hear me out. I get that is not our offensive line strength. I'm not saying they're about to just go out there and maul people. But, I mean, they do have a high-powered offense. So a part of, your defensive, strategy needs to be keeping that offense off of the field. But I don't – to CJ's point, I don't know how realistic that is because, again, one, we have not shown a penchant to stick with the run. And then two, it may be kind of easy to score at will. So I'm hoping this doesn't break out into a full-blown shootout. But you just never know right now.
I wanted to mention this. CB mentioned DeAndre Moore in the backfield, or more DeAndre in the backfield, right? I was enjoying that little wrinkle that we saw against Georgia. I don't know if y'all recognized it at the time because it took me until a rewatch to point it out, but we did see that. We did see a little, 20 personnel look from Texas with Trey Wisner and DeAndre Moore. We hadn't seen something like that. It's a nice wrinkle for Sark. Now, what can he do in two games that are characterized as must wins? What other additional little trinkets does he throw into his offense? Because I enjoyed that, right? It's little things like that for big games that I enjoy seeing be, unveiled at times. I don't know how successful it was or if we saw it multiple times, but I like the idea that there's innovation going on in the offense.
I would I'd come back to this, CJ. They only showed it once is the problem.
Yeah.
It was highly successful. Rod uses the term "play the hits." If something's working, play the hits. I felt like that worked, and there was no follow up to it. And so I feel like that's why sometimes I wonder. It feels like Texas has a collection of plays and not an identity on offense.
Yep.
And so there's no thought process. How does Texas beat this Arkansas team? Amanda was the question to start. and what do they need to do. The thing that I would say is that they need to score touchdowns, not field goals. I think everybody has moved the ball on Arkansas, right? I mean, CJ, you've got the stats there.
Yeah.
Texas needs to score 7 and not 3 because Arkansas is going to score. And that is going to be, I think, probably the difference in this game. Yep. Texas has to score touchdowns.
All right, we'll get to some more of your comments after we hear from our partners over at Von Lane. From Texas football Saturdays to NFL Sundays, from ACL Fest to Formula One, this fall is stacked, and Von Lane is a smart way to get there. Forget TSA lines or fighting I-35 traffic. With Von Lane, you board in minutes at luxury hotel terminals. Then it's just 22 big first-class seats, each with Wi-Fi outlets and onboard attendants bringing snacks, drinks, and yes, even beer and cocktails. You'll arrive relaxed and ready for kickoff, the concert, or family time. And with booking open through December, you can also lock in Thanksgiving and Christmas travel now. Go to vonlane.com, use code OTF25 and save $20 on your first ride. Von Lane, elevated regional bus transportation.
I'm using them on Sunday, by the way.
There you go. Good way to get there. Also, wanted to get to this before we talk a little bit more about football. We got a 5-star commitment for women's basketball. Brianna Crittenden, is that how you pronounce her last name?
Yeah, Brianna Crittenden, a 6'3" power forward. She's from Thornton, Colorado. Number 8 player in the country in the 2026 class. It's quite a get for Vic Schaefer. Obviously, they're playing right now. They're up 48-22 at half over James Madison. That's quite a big get right now. Texas won out over Tennessee for this recruitment. Of course, she took an official visit on October 31st as well. So, look, this team right now, top 4, top 5 in the country, I believe, continuing to stack elite blue chip players right now to the program. This is a big get for Vic Schaefer and the squad, who I don't know how many folks have watched games this year, but the scoring is aplenty. The options are aplenty. Marcus and I got to sit down and watch a game on Sunday as we got back from Athens. We came away kind of nudging each other saying, "Whoa, boy, they got plenty of options right now." Leah Crump looks fantastic. And, of course, Madison Booker leading the show. I will mention 48-22 over James Madison. That is without Brianna Preston, who dinged up an ankle on Sunday. She was out tonight and in a boot. So, altogether, Vic Schaefer and his program get richer over there.
Awesome. Yep. Thanks so much, CJ. If y'all have any more questions, make sure to get them in. Our super chats will jump to the top of our list. And I wanted to get to this one from Lane here. Thank you so much for your super chat. The Athletic hit piece, Rossini's article right before the game, Howard's video before signing. Lots of adversity for this team. Hope it builds culture. And I think this is something that you could find out before this Arkansas game as well, because I don't know which one of these issues you would think is the most, affects and impacts the team the most. Obviously, I'm pretty sure Sark had to talk to his team about this. But I wonder if you'll see a part of just playing angry in the response to just perpetuated rumors continuously about this.
Mark, she'll have to deal with something like this. I don't know, social media and TikTok and Instagram Reels weren't around then, but
it wasn't exactly like this, CJ. But there would sometimes be rumors about stuff. For us, a lot of times we were playing so well, it felt like damn near every year our defensive coordinators were going somewhere else to be a head coach. So there was, at that time, it was more of that. And I think it's still true, but it was always that kind of conversation of like the sign of a healthy coaching staff is if other people are trying to poach them. With stuff like this, I tend to think it's pretty galvanizing, if I'm honest. It's in a locker room, you can find, ways to look at this stuff as you're almost like in this foxhole, and it's really just, y'all against the world, and so you have this noise, you have everybody, talking about how bad this team is, right? And how much of a failure everything this season is. And then you still have these guys that have some pride about themselves that, still want to go out there and put out good film, whether that is somebody that is potentially considering to transfer or just, is trying to play for, I think, Jerry says this a lot, playing for their next NIL deal, right? And beyond all of that, the game is still the game, man. Like, you're not going out there and wanting somebody to punk you. Like it's you still have, these elements of you that you want to fight back, and you're not going to win any war of words on social media. So the best place for you to do that is on the field. So, I would like to think that it is an opportunity for them to come together and allow their pads to do some talking. So it remains to be seen if that's the case. But, I've had an opportunity to get to know a handful of the guys, and, I obviously have a relationship with Huff, and, still get to kind of pick his brain from time to time. I know that, these guys, football means a lot to them. And I know it doesn't always feel that way, and everybody has their opinion on how it looks on Saturdays at different times. But I think it's something that they can use to their advantage.
Hey, CJ, in that discussion that Sark had today, I didn't read all of it. I just listened to it. Did he say that he shared his same response with the team in that conversation? Because I know he did. I just don't know if he said it. To Marcus's point, hopefully it creates an us versus the world mentality. It's an opportunity for them to come together a little bit, maybe. I mean, that's what I hope.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You can go one of two ways here. You either come together and play for one another, or you say, hey, as long as I get to go home to where I'm living at the end of the day, hey, we'll try again next year. And that's, really the test of this culture. We've heard it for years. It's been built up from 5 and 7, like you mentioned earlier, Amanda, to the point where you're sending the most draft picks of any team in the country over a 2-year span, while getting back to the college football playoff back-to-back years, right? There is a certain standard that we continue to talk about, and that's why we hear the conversation about this season and underachieving and whatever. There's a standard there. Now, when faced against adversity, can this team stand up, come together, and play to that same standard when not meeting the expectations previously? That's going to be really interesting for me, and especially from a leadership standpoint, because, look, Anthony Hill, if he's not able to go, that's your green dot, right? He and Michael Taft, those are the two guys. And we saw what the defense looked like when Michael Taft was sidelined for a little bit. Now, if for whatever reason you don't have both, that's going to be an interesting game for the Longhorns to see who steps up in those absences.
Yep. Definitely. All right. We'll get to a couple more of your questions after we hear from our friends over at Culligan's. When it comes to the water your family drinks and uses every day, you don't want to cut corners. That's why for over 90 years, people have trusted Culligan. And here in Austin, Culligan Ultra Pure has been serving the community for more than 60 years. Culligan Ultra Pure provides high-quality residential water treatment at an affordable price, including reverse osmosis systems, water softeners, and UV purification lights. Whether your water comes from a well or a municipal source, Culligan has a perfect treatment solution for your home. And right now, you can schedule a free water test and save up to $600 when you mention On Texas Football. Culligan Ultra Pure proudly serves Austin, Corpus Christi, Victoria, Brownwood, Pampa, and Plainview. So don't wait. Call Culligan Ultra Pure today at 512-339-2378 to schedule your free water analysis. That's 512-339-2378. And make sure to ask for Michael. All right, we got a couple more super chats. Joel Heyman, thank you so much for your super chat. If we beat the Hogs in A&M and the OSU loss keeps us from the playoffs, we stop scheduling Blue Bloods in our non-conference. Now, I voiced how I felt like this on Twitter, or how I felt about this on Twitter. I hate this mindset. Sorry, Joel, I disagree with it. If you don't lose to Florida, you're in the playoffs. The thing is, you can make this argument. A&M scheduling Blue Bloods, they beat Notre Dame. Other teams are doing it, and they're winning. You win the games you're supposed to win to get to the college football playoff. That's what makes a good college football team. I don't know if you guys have different opinions to that, but that's just kind of where I stand on it. You don't lose to bad teams and expect your route to the college football playoff to be easy.
I don't think it's the OSU loss that keeps you from the playoffs.
No.
So now, on the scheduling tip, the only aspect of that I agree is because you're going to a 9-game SEC schedule. And to this point, the committee has not necessarily shown that they really reward that, in terms of scheduling those types of out-of-conference opponents. That being said, it seems like the committee just kind of makes up what they want to do as they go, and that it changes from year to year. There's not always a ton of consistency, but I don't think OSU loss is what's keeping you out. Losing to Florida and getting blown out to Georgia is. I mean, that's kind of the fact of the matter. So, I can't entirely agree there, Joel. I I kind of understand where you're coming from on it, but I don't really share that school of thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating to have the extra loss on the schedule, but at the same time, I mean, people love to talk about the Big 12 non-conference schedules as well and how they're weak. And do you want to be in that boat again? I don't know. I don't think so, personally. Thank you so much for your question, though. We got another super chat here from David. Have y'all taken a deep dive in Dia Bell and how he equates to Arch?
CJ, you or me?
Yeah, I'll start. Look, I think Dia's very good technically. I think fundamentally he's a little advanced from your typical five-star kid. Obviously, Arch technically coming in, was something that was, I think, very fine-tuned from a very early age. Dia with his basketball background, this is what I loved about KJ Lacey as well. Something about a point guard with the ball in their hands, just knows how to get the ball where it needs to go, when it needs to go. And to do so with broken pockets, to do so off rhythm and, with broken, footwork, if you will, as the result of pressure is something that you could see very, very clearly with Dia Bell. And look, he's played under duress a number of times early on in his high school career, right? He's had a number of those big time marquee high school matchups against teams from out of state. The one thing that is, excuse me, one thing that shows up through the tape is he gets the ball where it needs to go, and he has a great arm with the amount of talent that can get from sideline to sideline regardless of hash. That's the one thing that's going to translate. I'm really excited for Dia because, again, that mindset of just getting the ball out regardless of if it's on schedule or off, he makes plays and extends plays at a very good, very high level early on for his quarterback development.
I agree with CJ. I just want to add the style of quarterback Texas has been recruiting of late have guys that can move really well. Arch obviously moves good in the pocket, I think, and has some speed outside of it. But he's more of a pocket negotiator. I think KJ Lacey and Dia have the ability to not only be pocket guys, but they can also make people miss perhaps in the open field a little bit. And I think that's while he has the mindset, he's got the pedigree. I mean, his dad's a 10-year NFL vet or NBA vet, Raja Bell. I think I think that the style of quarterback to me right now is interesting that Texas is going after.
All right, we got another super chat from AJJ. Sorry, can't read today. CJ, if you were Sark, what would be the first move you make this upcoming offseason?
I line up the best interior offensive lineman, and I say, who fits what we like to do, and let's schedule a visit. I know Texas likes what they have on the interior. I know they like what the traditional program has done, building from the inside, but you can't run that risk, right? What if your guys aren't ready? What if the week of a game comes around and your season kicks off next week and all of a sudden that starter that you thought was going to be the guy is no longer the guy. And now you're left due to an already existing injury with guys that you were expected to be in your top 7 no longer there, right? You can't run that risk. So your offensive line, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. It doesn't matter who you have at running back. Your wide receivers could be great. If you can't protect, if you can't create on the offensive line, none of it matters. And that's the biggest thing. I know a lot of folks look at, and I see the comment pretty often. It's like, hey, why don't we give some of these freshman wide receivers a chance? It's like, well, I'd like to see it too, but I'd also like to see a clean pocket for the ball to be delivered where it needs to go. And that's been too often non-existent for the Longhorns this year. The offensive line has to be figured out. And look, if you're able to take 9 defensive linemen over the last 2 cycles, you can certainly take 1 or at least maybe 2 or 3 on the offensive line for me. That's where I look at it and say, hey, figure it out, because that's your pride and reputation. If you're Steve Sarkisian as an offensive coach, your offensive line has not held its own end of the bargain there.
Yep. Let's put you on staff already, CJ. All right.
That would be a good idea.
All right, we got a super chat from Matt Hanley. Thank you so much for the question. Hook 'em, y'all. Based on your past experiences with coaches in similar situations, do you think Sark wants to be here, given all the smoke surrounding him? I think he wants to be here. I think he's just kind of irritated with all the smoke at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's human, right? Like I I say this sometimes and people start, telling me I'm making excuses, and that's fine, right? But like, I can only imagine, like I was talking to my boys about this, right? Like, I've gone through things like personally that are not in the spotlight. Like, there aren't millions of people commenting on it daily. They're like, and I get the heavy is the crown, and that's why you're paid what you're paid. But like, I'd probably be a little irritated too. Now, granted, plenty of why he's irritated is also within his control, right? Like, so the heavy is the crown in that regard, in that you have some options available to you. There are some things you could have done differently to impact some of these outcomes, but I'd probably be a little bristly too. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, nobody likes people taking pot shots at them and then bringing their family into it and all these different things. And so look, I'm not sitting here trying to say I feel sorry for the guy. I'm just saying I don't think he's necessarily ready to tuck tail and go. He spoke at length a number of times, and CJ, I know you've been to all the availability since he's been here, like, about what his goal was in coming here and what he's looking to achieve. And regardless of however you think this season finishes out, next year he has Arch, who for me has continued to ascend and is somebody I would love to continue to build behind. And you have Colin Simmons, who is going to be Colin Simmons plus next year, right? I mean, those are two like key pieces on each side of the ball that you can build from. If I'm Sark and what I would think the competitor in him, I want to come back and shut some people up. So I don't see that as a guy that is wanting to tuck tail. Does he give some answers sometimes that maybe I don't care for? Sure. But I've never had to be in a microphone and deal with all that. And quite frankly, I'm not sure anybody that's commenting on it ever has either. But, it is what it is.
But with those two that you just mentioned, I'd like to know, secretly how many coaches would give up a good portion of their roster to have a chance to have both Colin Simmons and Arch Manning returning next year, right? You don't get guys like that for multiple years at the level in which they are contributing. And Bobby, you kind of alluded to it earlier. Sark did speak to the team, and it was rather emphatic, saying, hey, I'm here. This is something that I don't enjoy hearing about, but it has no basis, right? I'm y'all's coach. I have no plans leaving. And then he led into the talk on the SEC teleconference. So that was beforehand. And you see where and why he might have been a little testy is because, hey, he's been having to deal with this behind the scenes with his players, with his locker room, and he wants to put a stop to it. How do you blame him?
And recruits.
Yep.
The people that are propagating it, just like I said, it's hurting. They think they know more than they actually do.
Ahead of the biggest recruiting weekend of the year as well, Bobby.
Yes, the biggest weekend of the football recruiting of the season. Yeah, of the season. I just want to say this. When I was kind of what's the best word to put? I was a little demonstrative early about my conversation and how I felt. I want to apologize to one person in particular, and that's Joe Z. I felt like I went over the line on a comment I made in the chat. So please take my apology. At the same time, I stand by what I said overall. I just want everybody to understand. I may have went too far personally. Didn't mean to do that. But I am a little hot under the collar about the head football coach having to repeatedly refute things that he's repeatedly say are untrue. I mean, I don't know what else we want him to do.
Yep.
To everybody's point.
Definitely.
Josie still quacking away, huh?
All right, we'll get to a couple more of your questions after we hear from our friends over at Hey City Store. There are very few restaurants that once you go to, you immediately know they are just special. Hey City Store is one of those places. It's scratch-made Texas comfort food. They've got their famous truck stop enchiladas, award-winning chicken fried steak, homemade desserts, all of it absolutely delicious, all of it from scratch. There's also live music 6 nights a week with 50 beer taps, ice cold long necks, and tasty margaritas. There are 11 TVs alone in their ice house, perfect for game days, and they even have brunch served 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. every Sunday. Hey City Store is dog friendly, and they have a tree net for kids. Join the folks out at Hey City Store and bring your whole crew. For more information, check out the website at heycitystoretexas.com. Hey City Store, it's uniquely Texas. All right, we got a super chat from Justin. Thanks so much for your question. We need to create turnovers and try to keep the Arkansas offense off the field Saturday. Just win, baby. I feel like if you do that, you do just win. You do just that.
Yeah,
Love
absolutely. I love it. Just quick stat there. Arkansas is one of the worst teams in the country in turnover margin. Only 8 takeaways this year, 18 turnovers. That's a -10 ratio, bottom 5 in the country.
There we go.
Hey, CJ, do you think they're going to be able to keep Taylor Green in the pocket? They did last year, I thought.
Yes, they did very well. They also had a healthy Anthony Hill, right,
Yeah.
which is going to pose a bit of an issue. But one of the interesting things, and I mentioned Brad Spence, right, being a guy that will see more snaps. They've used Brad Spence quite a bit as a spy, kind of off the edge, maybe using Anthony Hill as his replacement somewhere else in a blitz or whatever, what have you. They have options. And I think even then, Leon Lafau, Ty Anthony Smith, this is a big game for him to step up. But I think you have plenty of options to contain and spy, something that Texas normally has been really good at when facing dual threat guys.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And we have one more question I wanted to get to before we left. Comment from Timothy. I don't trust this team anymore. I feel like this is a sentiment that is probably pretty regular throughout the fan base right now. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with Texas this season is just lack of consistency. You see some really good times. You've seen some really bad quarters of football.
Yeah, it's fair. Like, what are you going to trust? I think I heard you say this on some show here recently, CJ. Like, the thing that we can count most on for this team right now is they're going to commit penalties. Yeah. Outside of that, any given Saturday is like, they may look, like world beaters for several quarters, and then they just may, I almost used one of Coach Shipley's terms, but it wasn't gonna land as well or be appropriate. But any given time, the defense can just look like it, is letting the offense have their way with them. So I think it's fair. I think it's fair to say you don't trust them at this point. And then, from the flip side of it, you can continue to have faith that maybe something different will happen. I've said time and time again, my dad always makes this comment, which never really makes a ton of sense to me. He'll always say he's from the show me state, but I thought that was like Missouri or something. My dad's from Texas. So his whole point being, until you actually put it out there on film and you show him something different, he's just going to believe what you've been. And so I understand the comment, Timothy. I think what I would say to it is that, for me, I still just kind of remember what it's like to have some struggles at different times as a player, as a team, and knowing that there is an opportunity to turn it around. Look, this team may not meet all of their goals this year, but they still have an opportunity to create some good momentum. And, quite frankly, man, they go beat the Aggies and you feel a lot better about a lot of things. So I don't trust them to do any one thing consistently, but I do have faith that they have an opportunity to turn it around still.
I would say this, just to add to that. I was starting to trust this team. I was starting to trust the team, and then the breakdowns in the secondary happened 2 consecutive weeks. Like I started to understand who this team, I thought I was starting to really understand who this team was and would be. And then, all of a sudden the secondary goes to where. So I agree. I don't trust this team anymore. in short,
Yeah. Who thought after the Ohio State game, that's the area of the team we would not trust?
Yeah.
We got a super chat from Martin here. A little compliment from Marcus. How do you want to share with the class how you get your head so shiny?
I'm laughing at this because that's my cousin.
That's your cousin.
That's my cousin, and he lives in Dallas, Amanda.
Yeah.
So
oh, me too.
He is.
All of us in Dallas would love to know.
Watching. Jesus, I just use a shaver. All right, I use a shaver and
you got the wax on top,
some oil and some juices and berries in my beard, and I keep it. So this is what happens when you share some of the stuff you're doing with your family.
Yeah, good luck with the holidays coming up.
At least he's supporting. It was a super chat.
This is true.
All right. Quickly before we go, Bobby, you want to tell us where OTF will be on Saturday?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a tailgate over at on the Robert Dedman Boulevard in conjunction with the folks over at Surly Horns. Please come out and see us there. I think we'll also be at Kirby Lane Cafe on Saturday morning. So that should be fun over on Guadalupe. Come join us at either place, but it should be a lot of fun. I'm going in on Friday. We'll be at the Co-op. Marcus, you going to join us at the Co-op on Friday?
Yeah, I'm gonna pop by there. My niece is actually gonna be in town, and she's going to do like a campus tour at like 11. So I'm probably just gonna stay down there. I know they got some other stuff going on at the Co-op, and a handful of people that I know they're gonna be around there. So I'll be there on Friday as well.
Good deal.
Some pancakes before the game. I'll also be there this weekend, so I'll stop by and say hi. Finally getting back down to Austin for a game. Very excited about it. So hopefully we'll get a win in. But y'all, thank you so much for joining us for this Wednesday night on Texas Football Longhorn Livestream. Y'all make sure and join Bobby in the morning on Coffee and Football in the morning. For On Texas Football, I'm Amanda Atwell, and we have Marcus Myers, CJ Vogel, and Bobby joining us today. Thank you so much for joining us, and hook 'em horns, guys.
Welcome.